brothers and sisters, it is clear that at each moment we have to become more and more independent from the mind. For the mind is certainly a dungeon, a prison, where all of us are prisoners. We need to evade that prison if indeed we want to know what liberty is. To know that liberty which does not belong to time, that liberty which is not of the mind. First of all, we must consider the mind as something that is not of the being. Unfortunately, people who are quite identified with their mind say, "I am thinking." Thus, they feel as if they are the mind itself. Schools which dedicate themselves to the fortification of the mind exist. They impart courses by correspondence, teaching how to develop mental power. However, all of that is an absurdity, because it is not the fortification of the bars of the mental prison that is required. What is required is the destruction of those bars in order to know true liberty, which I have already stated is not of time. For as long as we are in the prison of the intellect, we will never be capable of experiencing true liberty. The mind in itself is a very painful prison. No one has ever been happy with the mind. Up to now, we have never known of a human being who is happy with the mind. The mind makes all creatures unhappy. The mind makes them miserable. The happiest moments that we have all had in life have always been in the absence of the mind. Those have been moments that lasted for an instant, but indeed, these were moments which we will not be able to forget in our lifetime. In such a moment, we have known what happiness is, despite that such a moment has only lasted for a second. Therefore, the mind does not know what happiness is. It is a prison. We need to learn how to dominate the mind, not other people's minds, but one's own mind, if we want to become independent of it. It becomes indispensable to learn how to see the mind as something that we must dominate, as something that, let us say, that we need to tame. Let us remember the Divine Master Jesus entering into Jerusalem, seated upon his donkey on Palm Sunday. That donkey is the mind which we must subdue. we must ride upon the donkey, and not allow the donkey to ride upon us. Unfortunately, people are victims of their mind, since they do not know how to ride upon the donkey. The mind is an extremely clumsy donkey which we must dominate, if indeed we want to ride upon it. We must converse with the mind while in meditation. If a doubt crosses the mind, we must then perform a dissection on that doubt. When a doubt has been properly studied, when a dissection has been performed on it, then it does not leave any trace whatsoever in our memory. It disappears. However, when a doubt persists, when we want to incessantly combat it, then a conflict is formed. Every doubt is an obstacle for meditation. It is not by rejecting doubts that we are going to eliminate them, but on the contrary, it is by performing a dissection on them in order to see that which is real, that which is concealed within them. Any doubt which persists in the mind becomes an obstacle for meditation. Therefore, we must analyze it, disjoin it, and reduce such doubt to dust. This is not performed by fighting the doubt, but by opening it up with the scalpel of self-criticism, by carrying out a rigorous and implacable dissection on it. It is only in this manner that we will come to discover what was within that doubt which was not important, and to discover what was real and what was unreal within such doubt. Therefore, doubts sometimes serve in order to clarify concepts. When one eliminates a doubt through rigorous analysis, when one performs a dissection on it, one discovers a truth. Thus, from such a truth, something more profound comes, more knowledge, more wisdom. Wisdom is elaborated based on direct experimentation, on our own experimentation. It is elaborated based on profound meditation. Sometimes, I repeat, we need to converse with the mind, because many times when we want the mind to be still, when we want the mind to be in silence, it persists in its stubbornness, in its useless chattering, in the struggle of the antithesis. Therefore, it is necessary to interrogate the mind. Speak to the mind as follows. Well, mind, what is it that you want? Well, answer me. Then, if the meditation is profound, a representation can emerge within us. Thus, within that representation, within that figure, within that image is the answer. We must then converse with the mind and make it see the reality of things until we make it realize that the answer is erroneous, to make it realize that its preoccupations are useless and the reason why such preoccupations are useless. Thus, in the end, the mind remains still, in silence. However, if we notice that illumination does not emerge yet, that the chaotic state, the incoherent confusion, with its struggle and incessant chattering, still persists within us, then we have to call the mind to order once again. We have to again interrogate it. What is it that you want? What are you looking for? Why do you not leave me in peace? One needs to speak clearly and converse with the mind as if it was a strange individual. Certainly, the mind is a strange individual because it is not of the being. Therefore, we must treat the mind like a strange subject. We must recriminate it. We must scold it. The students of advanced Zen are used to the practice of judo. However, their psychological judo has not been comprehended by the tourists who arrive in Japan. To see, for instance, the monks practicing judo, struggling with one another, it would appear to be a mere physical exercise, but it is not. In fact, when they are practicing judo, they are hardly noticing the physical body. Certainly, their struggle is directed towards the domination of their own mind. Thus, the judo in which they are engaged in is against each of their own minds. Therefore, the psychological judo has an objective, that is to subdue the mind, to treat the mind scientifically, technically, with the objective of subduing it. Unfortunately, Westerners see just the shell of judo. Of course, as always, the superficial and foolish Westerners take judo as a practice of personal defense. They forget the principles of Zen and Chan. This has been truly lamentable. Something similar has happened with the tarot. It is known that all of the ancient wisdom is within the tarot. It is known that all the cosmic laws and laws of nature are within the tarot. For instance, an individual who speaks against sexual magic is speaking against the ninth arcanum of the tarot. Therefore, this individual is casting a horrible karma upon himself. An individual who speaks in favor of the dogma of evolution is breaking the law related to the 10th arcanum of the tarot, and so on and so forth. The tarot is the measuring pattern for everyone, as I stated in my book, The Mystery of the Golden Blossom, which I concluded stating that the authors are free to write what they please. Nonetheless, they must not forget the measuring pattern. This measuring pattern is the tarot, that is the golden book. If they do not want to violate the cosmic laws and fall under the law of karma, the law of contantia, which is superior karma. After this short digression, I want to state that the very sacred and very sapient tarot has become a poker game and has converted into different card games which exist in order to entertain people. People have forgotten the laws and principles of the tarot. The sacred pools of the ancient temples, of the temples of mysteries, have today become pools for swimmers. The art of bullfighting, a profound science, the terrene science of the ancient mysteries of Neptune in Atlantis, has lost its principles. Today, this science has become the vulgar bullfighting circus. Therefore, it is not strange that the Zen Chan Judo, whose objective is precisely to subdue one's own mind in each of its movements and stops, has degenerated, has lost its principles in the Western world, and has become nothing more than something profane, which is only used today for personal defense. Let us look at the psychological aspect of judo. The psychological judo which the Revoultion of the Dialectic teaches. One needs to dominate the mind. The mind has to obey. We need to recriminate it firmly in order for it to obey. How is it possible that while we are in the practice of meditation, in those instants within which we seek stillness and silence, the mind imposes itself and does not want to be still? We need to know why it does not want to be still. Then we need to interrogate it, to recriminate it, to whip it, to make it obey, since the mind is a stubborn, clumsy donkey which we have to dominate. Krishnamurti has not thought this, neither has Zen nor Chan thought it. This discipline that I am teaching belongs to the second jewel of the yellow dragon, to the second jewel of wisdom. Within the first jewel, we can include Zen, but Zen has not explained the second jewel, even when the introduction of it is within its psychological judo. The second jewel implies that discipline of the mind, dominating, whipping, scolding it. The mind is an unbearable donkey that we need to tame. Therefore, we need to count on several factors during meditation if we wish to attain the stillness and silence of the mind. We need to study the disorder because it is only in this manner that we can establish order we must know what in us is attentive and what in us is inattentive. Always when we enter meditation, our mind is divided into two parts. The part which pays attention, the attentive part, and the inattentive part. It is not the attentive part that we must focus our attention on, but rather it is precisely on that which is inattentive within us. When we are able to comprehend in depth what is inattentive within us, and study the procedures so that inattentive becomes attentive, we will have achieved the stillness and the silence of the mind. But we have to be judicious in meditation. We have to judge ourselves to know what is inattentive in us. We need to become conscious of that which exists as inattentive within us. When I state that we must dominate the mind, understand that the one who has to dominate the mind is the essence, the consciousness. By awakening the consciousness, we have more power over the mind, and thereby we become conscious of what is unconscious in us. It is urgent and unpostponable to dominate the mind, to converse with it, to recriminate it, to whip it with the whip of willpower, and make it obey. This didactic belongs to the second jewel of the yellow dragon. My real being, Samael Aun Weor, was reincarnated in ancient China. At that time, my name was Chao Li, and I was initiated into the Order of the Yellow Dragon. Presently, I have orders to deliver the 7 jewels of the Yellow Dragon to whosoever awakens consciousness by living the revolution of the Dialectic and by achieving integral revolution. First of all, if we truly wish to take the most advantage of the second jewel, then we must not become identified with the mind. Because if we feel ourselves being the mind, if for instance we say, I am reasoning, I am thinking, then we are affirming an absurdity, and we are not in agreement with the doctrine of the Yellow Dragon. Because the being does not need to think. Because the being does not need to reason. The one who reasons is the mind. The being is the being, and the reason for the being to be is to be the being itself. The being is, what has always been, and what shall always be. The being is the life which throbs in each atom, just as it throbs in each sun. The one who thinks is not the being. The one who reasons is not the being. We do not have the entire being incarnated, but we have part of the being incarnated. This part is the essence, or Buddhata. that part of the soul which exists within us, that is the spiritual, the psychic material. It is necessary for this living essence to impose itself on the mind. The one who analyzes within us are the eyes, because the eyes are but mere forms of the mind, mental forms that we must disintegrate and reduce to cosmic dust. Let us study something very special in these moments. There could be a case of someone that dissolves the eyes, eliminates them. It could also be the case that someone, besides having dissolved the eyes, fabricates a mental body. Obviously, this person will acquire intellectual individuality. Nonetheless, this person has to liberate himself even from this very same mental body, because the mental body itself, no matter how perfect it might be, also rationalizes, also thinks. But the most elevated form of thinking is non-thinking. Therefore, as long as one thinks, one is not in the most elevated form of thinking. The being does not need to think. He is what has always been and what will always be. Therefore, in synthesis, we must subdue the mind and interrogate it. We do not need to subdue other people's minds, because that is black magic. We do not need to dominate the mind of anyone, because that is witchcraft of the worst kind. What we need is to subdue our own mind and dominate it. During meditation, I repeat, there are two parts, that which is attentive and that which is inattentive. We need to become conscious of that which is inattentive in us. Upon becoming conscious, we can evidence that the inattentive has many factors, like doubts. There are many doubts. Many are the doubts which exist in the human mind. To become independent of the mind is important in order to know that which is real, not to know it intellectually, but rather to really and truly experience it. Thus, we can see different forms of skepticism, doubt, etc. by paying attention to what is inattentive within us. Then when we see any type of doubt, we have to tear it into pieces, to submit it to a dissection in order to see what it truly wants. Once we have totally torn it into pieces, that doubt then disappears, without leaving any mark on the mind, without leaving even the most insignificant trace in the memory. When we observe what is inattentive in us, we also see the struggle of antithesis within the mind. It is at this point that we have to tear apart those antitheses in order to see what truly they hold. One must also perform a dissection of the memories, the emotions, the desires, and the preoccupations which one ignores, which one does not know where from or where they come. When within our meditation we judiciously see that necessity of calling the mind to attention is emerging, that is a critical point where one has become weary of the mind, that the mind does not want to obey in any manner. Then there is no choice but to recriminate it, to speak to it forcefully, to deal with it face to face, as we would do with a strange and inopportune subject. one has to lash it with the whip of willpower, recriminate it with harsh words until one makes the mind obey. One must converse many times with the mind so that it will understand. If it does not understand, then one has to severely call it to order. To not identify with the mind is indispensable. One has to whip the mind, subjugate it, dominate it. If the mind continues to be violent, then we must again whip it. Thus, in this manner, we come out from within the mind and reach the truth. Certainly, the truth is that which is not of time. When we succeed to reach that which is not of time, we can then experience an element that radically transforms. Thus, a certain transforming element that is not of time exists. That element can only be experienced, I repeat, when we come out of the mind. One must struggle intensely until one succeeds to come out of the mind, in order to achieve the intimate self-realization of the being. We need to become independent of the mind over and over again, and enter into the current of sound, the world of music. This is the world where the word of the Elohim resounds. This is where the truth certainly reigns. Hence, while we are bottled up in the mind, what can we know about the truth? Perhaps we know what other people say about the truth, but what do we know? The important thing is not what other people say, but what we experience through ourselves. Our problem is how to get out of the mind. For this goal, in order to emancipate ourselves, we need a science, a wisdom. This science, this wisdom is found within Gnosis. When we think that the mind is quiet, when we believe that it is in silence, nonetheless, no divine experience comes to us. It is because the mind is not quiet nor silent. Deep down, the mind continues struggling. Deep down, the mind is chattering. Then we have to confront it, to converse with it, recriminate it through meditation, and ask it what it is that it wants. To tell the mind, for instance, "Mind, why are you not quiet? Why do you not leave me alone?" Then the mind will give some kind of answer, and we will respond to it with another explanation. This is in order to convince it, however. If the mind does not want to be convinced, then there will be no other remedy but to subjugate it by means of recrimination and the whip of willpower. In meditation, the dominion of the mind goes beyond the struggle of the opposites. In this manner, for example, when a thought of hatred or an evil memory assaults us, then one has to truly try to comprehend it, try to see its antithesis, which is love. Thus, if there is love, why is hatred there? What is the purpose of that hatred? For example, if the memory of a lustful act surges forth, then one has to pass through the mind the sacred chalice, the sacred lance. One has to say, "Why do I have to profane the sacred with my morbid thoughts?" If the memory of a tall person surges forth, we must then see him short, and this would be correct, since the key is in the synthesis. Therefore, to know how to always find the synthesis is beneficial, because from the thesis one has to pass on through the antithesis. Yet, the truth is not found in the antithesis or in the thesis, because discussion exists in front of the thesis and the antithesis. Affirmation, negation, discussion, and solution is what is really wanted. Affirmation of a bad thought, negation of the same through the comprehension of its opposite. Discussion. One has to discuss what it is which is real within one and within the other until one arrives at wisdom, thus leaving the mind quiet and in silence. This is how one must practice. All of this is part of the conscious practices related with the observation of that which is inattentive. Nevertheless, if we simply say, it is just a memory of a tall person, and we put a short person in front of it, and we finish there, then that is not right. What is right would be to say, tall and short are nothing but two aspects of the same thing. However, what matters is not what is tall or what is short, but what is the truth that is hidden behind all of this. Because tall and short are just two illusory phenomena of the mind. This is the way in order to arrive at the synthesis and the solution. What is attentive in oneself is that which is formed by the subconsciousness, by that which is incoherent, by all the amount of memories that emerge from within the mind, which are the memories of the past that assault one now and again by the debris of the memory. The elements which constitute the subconsciousness must neither be accepted nor rejected. We must simply become conscious of that which is inattentive within us. Thus, in this manner, that which is inattentive becomes attentive in a natural and spontaneous way. This is how the inattentive becomes attentive. One has to make of daily life a continuous meditation. Meditation is not only that action of quieting the mind when we are at home or in the sanctuary. Meditation also encompasses the thread of daily living, so that life instantaneously becomes a constant meditation. The mind in itself is the ego. Therefore, it is urgent to destroy the ego. The outcome of its destruction is a mental substance with which the human mental body can be fabricated. However, this mental body will still be mind. Therefore, what is important is to liberate oneself from the mind. Thus, when one becomes free of it, one must learn how to function in the world of pure spirit without the mind. One must know how to live in that current of sound that is beyond the mind and is not of time. Ignorance is that which exists within the mind. Real wisdom is not within the mind, it is beyond the mind. The mind is ignorant. This is the reason why it falls and falls into so many grave errors. How foolish are those who make mentalistic propaganda, those who promise mental powers, those who teach others how to dominate other persons' minds. The mind has not made anyone happy. True happiness is very much beyond the mind. One cannot come to know happiness until one has become independent from the mind. Dreams belong to the unconsciousness. When one awakens consciousness, one leaves behind dreams. Dreams are nothing but projections of the mind. I remember a certain out-of-body incident that I experienced in the superior worlds. It was only an instant of carelessness. I saw how a dream came out of my mind. I was about to start dreaming, yet I reacted from within the dream that had escaped from within me for 1 second. Since I became aware of its processes, I quickly walked away from that petrified form that escaped from within my own mind. Nevertheless, what would have happened if I would have been with my consciousness asleep? I would then have had to stay there. Fascinatingly entangled in that mental form. However, when one is with his consciousness awakened, one immediately knows that in a moment of inattention, a dream can escape from within us. Thus, one can remain entangled all night long until the next morning. Hence, what is important in us is to awaken our consciousness in order to stop dreaming, in order to stop thinking. This process of thinking is cosmic matter. It is of the mind. Even the astral body itself is nothing but the crystallization of mental matter, and the physical world is also condensed mind. Therefore, the mind is matter, and it is very gross. Whether it exists in a physical state or in that state called astral or manasic, as the Hindus state. In any case, the mind is gross and material, whether in the astral plane or in the physical plane. Thus, the mind is physical or metaphysical matter. It is always matter. Therefore, the mind cannot make us happy. To know authentic happiness, true wisdom, we must get out from within the mind and live in the world of the being. This is what is important. We do not deny the creative power of the mind. It is clear that all that exists is condensed mind. But what do we have to gain with this? Has the mind perhaps given us happiness? We can do marvels with the mind, create for ourselves many things in life. The great inventions are condensed mind. However, these types of creations have not made us happy. What we need is to become independent, to come out of that dungeon of matter, because the mind is matter. We have to come out of matter, live in the role of spirits, as beings, as happy creatures beyond matter. Matter does not make anyone happy. Matter is always gross, even when it assumes beautiful forms. If we search for authentic happiness, we will not find it in the matter but in the spirit. Therefore, we need to free ourselves of the mind, because true happiness comes to us when we come out of the dungeon of the mind. Again, we do not deny that the mind can be the creator of many things, of inventions, of marvels. However, do any of those things give us happiness? Who is the happy one among us? Consequently, if the mind has not given us happiness, we have to come out of the mind and find happiness somewhere else. Obviously, we will find it in the world of the spirit. But what we need to know is how to evade the mind, how to liberate ourselves from the mind. This is the objective of our exercises and studies, which I have delivered in the Gnostic books. 3% of consciousness and 97% of subconsciousness exists within us. This is true. Consequently, that which we have of consciousness is what must direct itself to that which we have of unconsciousness or subconsciousness, in order to recriminate the unconscious part and to make it see that it has become conscious. But it is necessary for the conscious part to recriminate the subconscious part. This task, that is, the conscious part, directing itself to the subconscious part, is a very important exercise that can be practiced at dawn. Thus, this is how the unconscious part becomes conscious, little by little. Inferential peace.